many things to be thankful for, such as the law enforcement, our military, and our EMS and fire personnel that protect us on a daily basis. Lead us through the coming days and help us to be better representatives for the people as well as yourself. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 on our agenda is an opportunity for hearing by Costner Law regarding a request for a refund of an overpayment of excise tax paid to the Register of Deeds Office. If is anyone present who wishes to comment from Costner Law? Consideration of this request is item 7 on the consent agenda. We will now move on to our informal comments and entertain Mr. Robert Consoli.
Commissioner Simpson, my comments were, I'd like to speak with regard to item 8, the conditional rezoning Correa, if need be. That's what I put down as my comment item.
Jeff, he's welcome to speak if he wishes to, correct? Yeah. You wish to speak, it's a part of consent, so it may be approved of consent. It could be pulled out as a part of consent. We'd be happy to listen to your comments if you'd care to mention them.
Okay, well. My name is Robert Consoli. I'm the president of the HOA Chatsworth subdivision in Waxhaw, Eden County. I was glad to see this on here, and that there's the potential that you're going to push this back to the planning board. And the reason being is this was decided in favor 6-0 to rezone it commercial. Now this is a tiny, tiny piece of land, about 2.21 acres, and it's right next to Truffle Plaza, which you guys, you gentlemen do a lot of different things that you're looking at, but we looked at this several times over the past several months, and the planning board turned it down 6-0 for several reasons. So unfortunately, and even I think his name's Don Fisher, he's the chairman of the planning board, he was concerned, or he was wondering why no one from Chatsworth showed up for the meeting. Well, the reason being is no one from Chatsworth received any notification. Somehow it was supposedly went out, but it didn't. No one received it. So hopefully, when you look at this, you will push this back to the planning board, so we can talk to the planning board tomorrow night and give them our reasons why we don't think that the rezoning should be done. I don't think it's probably appropriate for me to go through a litany of why it shouldn't be rezoned with you folks tonight, because it could be a moot point. That was the reason I wanted to put my name on the list rather than not be able to speak at all.
Sure.
So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time. And that will take us to our additions, deletions, and or adoption of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Have a motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. And that takes us to consent.
Motion to approve consent.
Motion to approve consent. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. That will take us to old business. 16 widening and bicycle pedestrian accommodations.
Evening, Commissioners, Ms. Cotto. I am back as a update to the Commission on NC 16, which is an active project being developed by the NCDOT to widen to multi-lanes at this point from the existing terminus in Weddington, where it's multi-lane down to approximately Ray Road, south to Waxhaw Parkway, approximately 6 miles. And this project, the county commission in January was asked to weigh in with its input regarding the cross-section for bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. That was a request from the NCDOT to all 3 of the municipalities plus the county, and there was different cross-sections that were considered. There was bicycle lanes, there were wide outside lanes, there were sidewalks or multi-purpose paths, and all 3 of the municipalities that we've been coordinating with, Marvin, Waxhaw, and Weddington, each approved different cross-sections. And so we're back to line up our cross-section to ideally coordinate with theirs and clarify what the implications are of that decision so that we can submit our feedback to the NCDOT so they can continue with the design process. The text that's in red and italicized is recent information that came out after this agenda item was developed. The NCDOT has had, I don't want to call it a change of heart, but potentially a change of policy regarding how they equate multi-purpose paths and striped bicycle lanes, which are wider than normal, just wide outside lanes. And they are allowing the cost and the width that would be incurred by the construction of those wide outs, or by the construction of those striped bicycle lanes, to instead be credited to a multi-purpose path on one side of the road. So if it took an additional 6 feet, for example, of asphalt and right-of-way to make those striped bicycle lanes, you could take those, subtract them from the road, and add that to what would be a sidewalk to turn that into essentially a multi-purpose path. And they don't have an answer in terms of is that at zero cost to the municipality, because in certain instances the cost may vary. But the cost would be credited to the multi-purpose path, but the expectation is that it would be a pretty minimal implication. And this is of relevance to Marvin, because Marvin's cross-section that they approved was for sidewalks, just like Union County, but instead of going with the wide outside lanes, which was the default, they asked for striped bicycle lanes. Weddington had asked for sidewalks with wide outside lanes similar to Union County, and Waxhaw asked for not only striped bicycle lanes, but a 12-foot multi-purpose path on one side and a 6-foot sidewalk, which is 1 foot wider than the normal sidewalk on the other side. And we have been asked, we've coordinated with Waxhaw in terms of what the implication is, and I know informally, and Commissioner Helms can weigh in with some of the discussion if I misspeak, that they would be interested or willing to consider paying for the marginal difference in the cost of that cross-section where it's in unincorporated Union County, but it's adjacent to Waxhaw, and they would want to see that cross-section carried through. But they have not taken action on it. We've asked the NCDOT, and they said they don't need to take action on it at this time. We just need to submit the requested cross-section. They'll essentially deal with the cost implications later. And so these are some of the considerations that we went through earlier, which is what do our plans call for? What are the benefits of these different types of cross-sections? What's the maintenance implications? And can we have different cross-sections? So for maintenance, anything that we would agree to would still be ultimately our responsibility to maintain, whether we enter into some agreement with the adjacent municipalities is something to be determined later. And we can have different cross-sections. Instead of just using the literal municipal boundaries and having the transitions seemingly arbitrary along the corridor, we would use specific roads to have the transition. So the Weddington corridor would go to Newtown Road, the Marvin section of the corridor cross-section would go from Newtown to Bonds Grove, and then the Waxhaw cross-section would be from Bonds Grove south. So we would communicate our input in that transition. And same as before, the cost share arrangement is based on our population. Union County's unincorporated population is being used for the cost share, so for us it would be 40%. For Weddington and Waxhaw, it would be 30%. So and for Marvin, it would be 20%. And this matters for the cost share that we would have to pay. The effective cost for Union County for sidewalks, I believe, is on the order of $14 a linear foot, which is really quite inexpensive, because consent agenda we had where the CDBG grant was being used for Waxhaw to construct some sidewalks along Waxhaw Marvin Road, their full cost was on the order of $130 per linear foot, or maybe a little more than that. So when you do these things by themselves, they're very expensive. If you can do it as part of a larger project, you can do a cost share like this, it's a lot less. So all three of the municipalities are participating. They didn't have to, and the county didn't have to either, but they've chosen to in some degree. So this details the positions and segments that I was talking about earlier. And the request in the agenda is actually, it's a little bit off. Instead of Weddington, which we don't really need to take action on because our cross-section is the same as theirs, we're really being asked to consider supporting the Marvin and the Waxhaw cross-sections. The Marvin cross-section in all likelihood is going to be next to no impact because it's a swap of the bicycle lanes to the multi-purpose path. They haven't had time to put it on a meeting for action, but informally I've spoken with their acting administrators as well as the mayor, and they're interested in this option, so they're going to take it up as soon as possible. And Waxhaw has already taken action. They don't have the opportunity to do the swap because they want both bicycle lanes and the multi-purpose paths. What we're being asked to do is to support theirs. I will say that the cost impacts for us really depends on which side of the road the multi-purpose, or the cost impacts for Waxhaw potentially, is which side of the road it goes on, because if it's on the west side of the road, our frontage is only approximately 600 or 700 feet. If it's on the east side of Providence Road, it's approximately 3 times that. So it could be more, could be on the order of almost $100,000, including the right-of-way and utility implications if it gets complicated. On the other side, it could be as little as $25,000 or $30,000. But Waxhaw has informally proved or considered that cost increase to be something they would support, but they haven't put that on their agenda. They haven't taken action on it, so it's an uncertain position at this point. But happy to answer any questions you may have, but that's the update I have, and the request is being made of you in order to allow this project to proceed.
Did you skip a slide?
I may have.
Number 8, yeah. Is that the cost, the new cost?
This was just in case we needed some drill down information. It's kind of obsolete at this point because the swap of the bicycle lanes versus the multi-purpose path, it really reduces a lot of the multi-purpose path costs, but the DOT wasn't able to give me those specific costs. So this is just in reference to what you considered back in January.
Another question.
Sure, go ahead.
So right now, the DOT, before we were talking about this, they were gonna do the bicycle lanes as part of the road.
That was an option.
That was an option, that we could get the sidewalks, and then they were gonna do something with if we asked, that they would do something with bicycle lanes. And what's changed there is that they will incorporate that cost in with bicycle lanes and a multi-purpose path, or?
They would, if you were to subtract the bicycle lanes and take that cost savings and apply it to the multi-purpose path, it would allow you to then, in their mind, and the truth, be able to accommodate both bicycles and pedestrians on a facility. It would just now be a multi-purpose path instead of the striped bicycle lanes. Before, they were very inflexible and wouldn't allow that to occur. They would say if it's outside the roadway, that's an increased cost that's on you. But I think some big picture thinking went into this in Raleigh, and they said, you know, that is a savings, and let's allow them to make that swap if that's something they want.
So they would incur some of that cost then, right?
Well, there would be no change in cost, except for, well, I doubt it'll be exactly the same cost, but their thinking is that it's going to be a pretty fair swap to subtract the cost of the striped bicycle lanes and then add that cost to the multi-purpose path.
I know I spoke to some of the folks at Marvin, and there was some concerns about the cost on their end of things. So they're willing to do the bicycle multipath and the sidewalks now, or?
They're interested in it. They wanted the multi-purpose path all along, but they really did not have the
reserves, fiscal reserves to be able to weather a surprise expense relating to the multipurpose path. And so that's why they went with the bicycle lanes. They said, we wanna put something in for the bicyclists. We can give them striped bicycle lanes for free, so we'll just do that. And now, after the fact, DOT said, well, you could swap those for multipurpose paths. So they're gonna consider taking advantage of that.
And how do we know which side it'll go on?
We won't until the design is further along and there's a lot more research and investigation into the design of the road, what the implication is on specific properties, utility complications. It's just tough to say.
Cause, you know, with that being important, I mean, the item that he was just speaking about, that rezoning, you know, if it's on one side of the road or the other, it could have implications in what happens to
That's
those
correct. We've had 2 rezonings on the east side of Providence Road, and now we have, I think, 3 more. And so I believe they've all been on the east side of Providence Road. Not sure why, but that's how it's been going. And on some of them, like the large Waxaw-Nixon one we had dedication of the right-of-way and construction of the sidewalks. Unfortunately, if they're not built by a certain point, which will probably be in the next year to 2 years, they won't be built by the developer, because at that point the road will go into right-of-way and construction process, and we won't get credit for sidewalks having been built, which will allow us to not have to pay for that, because if the sidewalks are already in place, they will be replaced at no cost by the DOT.
Commissioner Akins?
So what's the initial and ongoing cost? What am I putting the taxpayers on the hook for?
Well, as of right now, if we just stay with the status quo and Waxaw pays for the difference, and
Now, we're assuming Waxaw's gonna pay the difference.
That's right, they haven't taken action on that.
So our action tonight is going to be based on Waxaw taking action?
That's correct.
So the mayor has made an offer without his board's consent, and you want me to vote on that now?
Yes. And
Seems silly.
yes, it does. I asked that very question of the NCDOT. I said, you're willing for us to go ahead without Waxaw taking action on this to tie up the loose ends? Because I specifically asked that question of Waxaw, are you gonna be putting this on your agenda soon? They said, we're not putting it on our agenda anytime soon.
Then I see no reason for us to take any action on it.
Commissioner Helms?
And the only action I'd see is initially when we approved the 2 sidewalks. Not taking advantage of the bike lanes on the road at no cost to the county. Right? Because if we do the 2 sidewalks and the road with the bicycle lanes on the road, there's no cost to the county. That's the basic.
That is correct.
So I think what we need to take action, last time, we didn't include the bicycle lanes on the road, not gonna cost us anything. We need to approve that. We want the bicycle lanes, and then Waxaw can, if they decide they wanna pay the differential to go take one of the sidewalks once it hits theirs and put the bike path, they have the option of dealing with the DOT to do that. Is the way I understand it.
I stand by my statement. I think Waxaw needs to take action before I'm gonna be comfortable doing anything.
Would you be willing to take action on the Marvin portion to support something if they were to change their position?
Any
Because we
additional
could tie up
cost?
that section. At this point, it would be very close to neutral, but they can't commit that it's gonna be exactly neutral. They have to do an accounting of the subtraction of the bicycle lane costs and then the addition of the multipurpose path costs. But their assessment is gonna be pretty neutral.
Commissioner Rushing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think one thing maybe we discussed, I think maybe when you were here, was that with the rezonings and the amount of
I was here, I
right of way,
heard that, yeah.
the amount of right of way and stuff like that, that don't have to be purchased. We need to figure out something on this, and I like the idea of the state doing the bike lanes. If whether they do it along with the road or if they do it on the side on the road, whatever. And I think that Marvin would be more comfortable with that too, because like they indicated to you and me, the cost is a concern for them too. And the cost is definitely a concern on our end. So, you know, if we did the if we said what we did before, the sidewalks on each side with bike lanes in the road, or if DOT decides to put the bike lanes in a different place at no additional cost to us, is that options or not option?
You could make the motion to add the sidewalk, or add the bicycle lanes along any segment of it, and there's gonna be no cost implication to the county. Unfortunately, if Marvin then says we wanna take advantage of the multi-purpose path, then we further confuse the issue by having segments along the corridor that are disconnected. So that's why we're trying to, as much as possible, be consistent with what the municipalities are asking for.
So Marvin is asking for the sidewalks to be multi-purpose path, one multi-purpose path.
They haven't had a meeting yet where they can discuss that amongst their full group, but the informal feedback is that that's an attractive option to them. But
If it didn't cost any more than having the bicycle lanes in the road.
Mr. Helms?
I thought Marvin had already decided, taken action on the same option one that we're talking about with the bicycle lanes. If they wanna change their mind, they've gotta take another action. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and they haven't had a meeting since February,
Okay.
February 22nd, but they will soon.
So I agree with Commissioner Rushing that we modified our option one request to include the bike lanes on the road at no cost to our citizens. That'll be consistent with what Marvin's approved already. And if Waxhaw wants to cut a deal with above what we're doing and do another lane, then so be it. Does that help, Frank, at all?
You're gonna have to explain to me what you just said.
Basically do what we did before, the least cost option. And then let the state, either the state wants to put the bike lanes in the road or on the side of the road, whichever one they wanna do, as long as they're paying for it. So the least cost option is what.
Yes, we're agreeing to what the state will provide, 2 sidewalks, multi-lane with the bike lanes on the road at no cost to us. And if Waxhaw wants to cut a deal with them to come back over and pay additional to what we're paying, that's their option.
So, I guess I'm having a hard time envisioning this. Are we just gonna have one little stretch of bicycle lane in the middle of a road that doesn't go anywhere?
No, the bicycle lanes will start at Weddington and go all the way to Waxhaw. But Waxhaw wants the bike path on the side, which would start at their town limits. We have donut holes that will pay for the base, but Waxhaw want it to be consistent, they'd pay for the differential.
Okay.
And
So we're not committing any more funds
No.
to this project?
not with that option, modification to
Is
option
that correct?
So you would keep the sidewalks as it is right now, add the bicycle lanes, consistent with Marvin and Waxhaw. Weddington didn't ask for them, so there's no sense in adding it there. And if Marvin wanted to do a swap for the multi-purpose path, then delete those those striped bicycle lanes, so long as there's no cost to the county, you'd support that as well.
Well, there's no additional cost to the county, that's correct.
We can communicate that.
I think your motion covered it. I
I make-
assume that
you
was a
make a
motion.
motion?
I didn't make a motion.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we had a motion.
We got a motion.
Find out.
Make a motion.
You need,
I'm sorry.
you need action,
Yes, I would appreciate action.
okay?
Don't ask me to make the motion.
I'll make a motion that we modify option one to include the state bicycle lanes on the road at no cost to Union County.
Or as a multi-purpose path, whichever the state decides, as long as no additional cost. That's what he was asking.
Well,
The other options, they say that they'll pay for it on the
I
side
don't think
too.
the state's,
It's not our
state's
decision,
gonna
right?
pay for it. State's not gonna pay for it. Waxhaw would have to pay
Yeah,
for it.
no, he's
For
telling
the
you that.
for the Marvin portion, they would, because you would subtract the bicycle lanes and replace it with a multi-purpose path. That would be the Marvin portion.
Oh, okay.
So the state wouldn't pay for the Union County portion.
It would apply to both of us. I'm just saying, that's the the section where it's Marvin's input, which is Newtown down to Bonds Grove Church.
But if we approve option one with the addition of the bike
Bicycle
lanes,
lanes
they
pay
can
for
come
that
back
stuff.
later and offer us a deal, but it states what we're willing to pay for going through.
I really wish the DOT had said, y'all need to take action to say you'll pay for these things, because I think that would have tied it up. I'm afraid we'll have to come back in a year and a half when the costs come due.
Well, the thing
And
about
then
it,
what's going to happen at that point, when the costs come due, and we've already said we're not paying for it?
Well, we've already established our position when it comes to the Waxhaw area. That's where the real cost is that would come due. Waxhaw would, if the cost is shocking, then Waxhaw will ask for the corridor to be de-scoped, and it'll de-scope back to our cross-section, which means you would have a subtraction of the multi-purpose path in all likelihood, and just have it turned into a sidewalk.
Frank, to make it even more complex, the DOT's projections do not include moving utilities and extra right-of-way in their estimates.
I still go back, I don't know why we're taking any action beyond what we've already done on this without further input by these municipalities and a commitment, a firm commitment, and action by their boards before we do anything. This is, it's no wonder people don't trust government. Good Lord, this is a mess.
DOT is wanting everyone to take action so they can proceed forward with design. That is their motive at this point in time. And until they do design, they won't be able to tell you what the cost differentials are.
Well, I've stated my case. I'm not supporting any of it. I'll support what we originally did, period.
Even with the addition of the bike lanes at no cost to us, it's.
Put it in writing, it's no cost to us.
I have that in mind.
You have that in writing? So all we're doing is taking option one, which is the basic no cost, and saying, we want you to include the bike lanes as well.
Well, we had the Marvin segment where we were allowing the one-for-one, subtracting the striped bicycle lanes and transition to a multi-purpose path, if that's something that Marvin wants and there's no cost to the county.
My last speaking with Mayor Marvin, that wasn't on the table. You may have had a conversation with him.
We,
since then.
I spoke with the manager Friday.
we have a motion on the floor. Would you like to restate your motion, Mr. Helms?
That we modify our original position on option one to include the no-cost bike lanes that are available to us. End of statement.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2-2, no.
Fair enough, thank you.
Sorry. Employee survey.
Mr. Watson?
Good evening once again. Michael James accused me of doing my Barry White impersonation.
Stoney, you can relate to that, right?
I can relate.
In November 2017, I did a presentation to the board, rather lengthy discussion on that. Subject of employee survey, and at the end of that, the board requested that I come back with what HR would like to see accomplished in the employee survey process. So after a great deal of thought, consideration, discussion amongst staff, with the manager, and with outside consultants and other folks, I have a recommendation for you, one that I'm comfortable with and one that I hope that you will approve. I would like to see an in-house employee survey tool developed so that we could consistently use the same process going forward in the future and not have to redesign or reinvent the wheel every time it came time to do an employee survey. I mentioned to you in my previous presentation, the federal government employee viewpoint survey, which I had become aware of, and subsequent to our conversation last time, I had some correspondence with the folks that actually developed that tool. And they tell me that tool is in the public domain, it's not copyrighted, and we're free to use any and all of it that we think we might need to. Having spent a good bit of time looking at that tool, my belief is that we could modify that in short order according to the terminology and language that we use in this organization. You know, what they call a supervisor and what we call a supervisor may be two different things. I believe we ran into that issue on the last survey where we engaged a consultant. Their version or their definition of management was not in keeping with the terminology that we used internal, and that created some confusion. But I believe we could modify it in short order. I believe it does encompass all of the areas that the board has expressed interest in. Gaining information concerning the employee's work experience, how they feel about their work unit, their larger work division, their supervisor, organizational leadership, their overall satisfaction. Now, what they call work-life balance, every organization, we would definitely modify that section because every organization offers a different mix of work-life benefits. I'll just call them work-life benefits. Whether it's a wellness program or or whatever, some organizations offer telecommuting and things like that, and that may not be applicable to us, but we certainly have our own programs that we could use and supplement in there. And then of course demographics, and I'll tell you, those folks that put this survey together have done a really thoughtful job in how they collect that demographic information beyond just the standard age, gender, education level, things like that, and it really becomes meaningful. The other thing that I really like about this survey tool is it's been developed in such a manner that while it is collecting information from questions asked in each of these 8 sections, again, work experience, work unit, division, etc., it takes and reorganizes those questions into what they call indices. So there's an engagement index, and under that is leaders lead. There's a section on supervisors and intrinsic work experience. How satisfied are you with your work experience? Do you agree that we provide a place where you can come to work, not be harassed, be productive, make a good contribution, those types of things? It measures those types of items. It does have an overall satisfaction index, a workplace inclusion index, which I find very interesting. How fair is the organization? How open is it? How cooperative is your workplace? How supportive is it? How empowering is it? And then it has another index which they actually term human capital asset index. I termed it human resource assessment index, where it measures leadership and knowledge management, results-oriented performance culture, talent management, and job satisfaction. And in their reporting tool, or the way they have their reports aligned, those indexes become important, especially in subsequent years when you do the survey. They are actually taking those indexes, measuring it against prior years to determine, are you making progress in areas that may have some deficiency, or I'll say deficiency, but they may not be what you expect or want to see out of this organization. And it measures, are we making progress in the right direction? Well, it would measure also if we're making progress in the wrong direction, okay? So, in order to accomplish this, what I would propose is, and I alluded to this in the previous presentation, is a multidisciplinary team made up of employees at several levels of the organization, but more importantly, employees that have specific special skill sets that would lend themselves to this project. I've already made a list of those, and I've had some discussions with the manager about that. She's given me her input. I believe that in developing this in-house project, it would be not only a time savings, we would not have to go through the RFP development, through the RFP solicitation, through the vendor interviews, vendor selection, contracting process, and subsequently we would not incur those costs, which could be substantial. I believe we could do this in a 5-month period. If you approve this recommendation tonight, I believe we could wrap this thing up at the latest by the end of July. I've had some thoughts about whether or not the survey period, I was building in initially a 2-week survey time frame, but I'm having second thoughts on that, and I'm thinking that it probably needs to be a little bit longer than a 2-week period of time. But in any case, I believe we can wrap it up by the end of July. The other component that I did not mention in the brief for the agenda abstract was the use of a third-party consultant, not to conduct the survey, but someone who could take the results and provide a management brief, an objective third-party, arm's length evaluation, review, comment to management that would become part of the report, the annual report that has all of the information in it. That would, again, from an outside perspective, management consultant perspective, may provide us with some insights that we may be overlooking. I think it would be money well spent to do that. At the very least, it would confirm our understanding about what the results actually were. So that's my recommendation, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that I may for you at this time.
Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So now you've thrown a kink into it when you start talking about third party, but it says no additional funds required. The third party would acquire additional funds, right?
Well, that's for the remainder of this budget year when we put that in. I'm glad you brought that up.
So,
I do have some funds available. I don't know how much it would cost. I would go through a request for qualifications process, but we are, of course, we're putting together the budget for next year, but it would not require any funds for the remainder of this fiscal year.
okay, I'll make a motion to accept staff recommendations for the employee survey process and timeline.
We have a motion. Discussion. My only question mark would be, you say you could have it done by the end of July?
We
was there not some discussion about intermingling that with their performance review period?
There was, I think these other projects are going well enough that we can accomplish this, within the original time period that was asked for.
Okay, well, excuse me, have a motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, none.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Proceed. We'll be back to the board with a status update at some point in time.
Thank you.
Item number 17 is a resolution in support of legislative action on litter. And Mr. Helms will give you an opportunity to discuss that.
We've discussed with legal on several occasions. We've got a pervasive problem in the county where advertisement is littering our streets significantly. Sometimes houses will have 20 days. You almost get one once, about 3 times a week. However, when I talk with Jeff, the problem is they put 1 page of newspaper print in it, so it protects them from the littering, state statute littering thing. So I asked Jeff if he would do a resolution where we could ask our legislature to give us a means to control this, because it's blatant. I mean, I know I live over off of Newtown Road, and I had a neighbor that he's owned the house, he keeps it up, but he doesn't live there. And they keep throwing it out and throwing it out. But once every week or so, somebody comes in to make sure there's not mail and picks up the litter. So I'll be glad to read the resolution. This is resolution in support of legislation to further regulate litter in the state of North Carolina. Whereas Union County has encountered and continues to encounter a widespread problem whereby flyers and or leaflets distributed with or by newspapers, which this is a newspaper carrier that throws these out, litter the lawns, driveways, and sidewalks of Union County where such newspapers and flyers are delivered. Whereas Union County has a substantial interest in maintaining a clean and aesthetically pleasing environment within which its citizens may live, and whereas NCGS 153A 132.1 authorized county boards of commissioners to enact ordinance governing the disposal, depositing, or dumping of litter within the unincorporated areas of their county, and whereas pursuant to statutory authority of the Union County Board of Commissioners, adopt an ordinance prohibiting littering, which ordinance defines litter using the same language found in NCGS 14-399, and such ordinance has been ineffective in preventing the distribution of flyers and or leaflets which accumulate to the point of constituting litter. Whereas the commissioners acknowledge that certain First Amendment free speech rights must be taken into account when addressing the issue of litter, especially when related to newspaper distribution, and whereas despite regulation at both state and county levels, the Union County Board of Commissioners has found that it's been unable to solve the issue of flyers and other paper materials accompanying newspaper littering Union County. Now therefore it be resolved that the Union County Board of Commissioners request that North Carolina General Assembly consider the litter issues description herein to take such action as it may be available to address this problem, and be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to Union County Legislative Delegation to the North Carolina General Assembly. This is no attempt of putting them in your paper box, things of that nature. It just slings them in the yard arbitrarily. and it's all up and down the roads. And speaking with a number of residents in the community, matter of fact, there's been Facebook posts, people talking about litter, and they want to address it. So hopefully we can ask our legislators to give us some latitude to control this blatant abuse of litter in our properties.
Do you like the motion?
Yep,
Make
I'll
the
make,
mo-
I'll make a motion, we adopt the resolution in support of legislation to further regulate litter in the state of North Carolina.
You have a motion, any discussion? I would just say that I support Commissioner Hale's motion. I know I find it at my house, they will provide that information to driveways that have no mailbox. There's nobody, it's a farm drive or something like that, farm road, that they throw those out. I have had a number of emails and calls in the last month with regard to litter. And you know, unfortunately, we live in a throwaway society. I was talking to the manager about it today, and we don't only have a throwaway container, it's a throwaway container inside a throwaway container with a safety throwaway container in it. So you got 3 or 4 pieces that can be thrown out. And I think a lot of that is blowing trash. It blows out of the back of trucks and vehicles, things like that. The Public Works has made an effort, I believe, Manager, to cover our vehicles from the
Yes, sir.
convenience site to prevent
Yes,
as
sir.
much of that as possible. Several have asked me, why don't we have the prisoners police the roads like we used to? There's a lot of complications with that.
Would you like me?
Certainly,
to that?
Can you elaborate?
I spoke to our sheriff as it related to our inmates as well as his knowledge, since I was unable to get a hold of anyone at the Department of Correction on this particular issue. And in our situation, our inmates have not yet been sentenced. They are just awaiting trial. And therefore, in order to, you usually look for volunteers, and the reason inmates volunteer to take on these type of responsibilities because they get credit towards their time served. We don't have that situation because they have not in fact been sentenced. And so the sheriff talked to me a little bit about it, said that in their situation, it really, they would not anticipate any volunteers. There's no benefit to the individuals that are incarcerated, and did not see it being possible within the Union County system. He did speak of the Department of Corrections, and we do have a facility in Anson County. And Anson County does have inmates that are used to clean up roadways. However, their backlog is so extreme that the sheriff indicated to me that if it's not months, it may be years before they would be able to provide any relief to Union County. So it sounds like a simple solution, but unfortunately it is not that simple of a solution.
I know we also have the Adopt a Highway system, and several people have commented. I know within a 2-mile radius or 2 miles in either direction of my driveway, my wife Sheila never misses a piece of paper. She'll stop me in the truck 5 times to while she gets out and goes and picks it up. It takes a community-wide effort. It takes teaching our kids and our friends to have a trash can in their vehicle and put their trash in the trash can. Not to be so reuse, recycle, and
Something else, another
yes,
R.
one more R. But to take advantage of those products, utensils that you can keep out of the waste stream. But it is a issue that's pervasive in our society, and I certainly understand concerns. So I wanted to raise that issue.
And if I might, Chairman, if people are interested in Adopt the Highway, if they go to the NCDOT website, there is information on their website as to how that can be affected, since it's through DOT.
Thank you. It's reduce, I believe. Reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Yes, sir, it is.
We have a motion. All those in favor, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Akins.
That's all right. Does the Adopt a Highway, do they provide the trash bags and things for, the folks to use, or?
Well, I'm part of Monroe Rotary, and we have a stretch of highway, and we provide it all ourselves, so I'm not aware that they do. I could be wrong, but I know on the stretch we do, we provide all the material ourselves, including our safety vest.
Would it be possible, and this is just a thought, because my impression was that they did provide trash bags.
Okay.
Would it be possible that we maybe encourage some of our local Boy Scout troops and other civic organizations, that if we can provide the bags here, that we can encourage them to go out and maybe form some of these group activities, and I'd be willing to, issue a certificate of appreciation and recognize them here. Just some outside the box thinking here, instead of, I certainly support the resolution, but I think if we could get our own folks engaged in cleaning up and policing our own communities, I think that'll go a long way. Just food for thought.
Okay.
Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They do provide. We actually adopt the highway in front of our range, and that's with Palmetto Pride. And we've, first I was introduced to it was back in 1988, 89 when it first started. The Piedmont High School FFA adopted a section of Highway 601 and got introduced to it there. We've been involved with it with our family. And it's a really good idea for a business, especially you think about places like along 16 where there's all the traffic that's there. To be able to get your business out in front of those folks, it's like a billboard, and that'd definitely be a good idea for civic clubs, churches, businesses, anybody that wants to adopt the highway. It's a good community service, and they do provide the trash bags and they pick it up. So the state, you just coordinate with the state, and they come by and they get it and they take it away for you, so you don't have to go and pay $5 a bag at the to dump them either. Yeah, I'm right along with you guys. That's a great thing for organizations to do, and I certainly support the resolution. And we just have to get people thinking about this. And we do have an officer that this board, that the Board of Commissioners in the past has provided to investigate dumping, like somebody drops a bag of trash off on the side of the road, that's there. And also, I think that, this, we don't like it no more than anybody else. I don't think anybody on this board's supportive of it. I got a card here from Litter Busters, and I know that they've been in contact with us, and it makes your community look bad, and when we have potential businesses coming in or potential people coming here to do hiring, the last thing they want to see is a bunch of garbage. So I do support your motion. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Ms. Cotto, time for your comments.
Yes, and I will keep them brief. As the board is aware, a portion of our human services staff moved into the new facility over the weekend. The health department and the business office, and the health department will be open for business tomorrow. Next weekend, we are moving the balance of the business operations as well as social services. Social services will be closed on Monday the 12th, but they will be open for business on Tuesday the 13th.
Commissioner Akins.
Yes, I want to clarify my earlier vote and make sure that, Bjorn, I want you to be very clear that my vote in the negative was nothing towards you. Clearly, I just am very concerned about the lack of what we'll call transparency by DOT to ensure a smooth understanding of all the particular parties as to what we're committing to, and so that I don't particularly have anything against bike lanes. I don't have anything against multi-path lanes, but I think that we need to have a better understanding of what we're voting on before we take action. So with that, I'll wish everyone a good evening.
Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This weekend, we're going to be having an event where we'll have children from all over Union County and this area participating in a hunter safety competition, and hope that everything goes well there. And just want to show you how so many kids, when you see one tragedy or one problem, that's not what our children are doing nowadays. And our children are very safe and are learning. We have a great hunting tradition here in Union County, and we look forward to working with those kids, and they don't get enough attention. It's the bad kids that get the attention, and these kids really deserve it.
Mr. Hales?
No comment.
No further comments. Motion to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.